Uh, Thank you all for coming out to see us today. We have the founder of Careem and founders of Dianrong here to talk about how to make it against the big guys, although frankly at this point they already are pretty big in their own right. They're both unicorn status. And so I thought the simplest thing to do would have them sort of introduce themselves and their companies and tell a little bit about the path that how did they decide to found their current companies, since they're both have long histories of sort of serial entrepreneurs and they're veterans of the industry, and probably in tech terms are ancient. Not, not to get too personal about it. So Sol, if you could start and give us a quick description of what Dianrong does and how you came to found it.
Sure. So my name is Htite. I am fascinated by technology. I spent 13 years of my life working for Oracle. I was building software for large banks, large financial insurance companies. In 2007, I left Oracle to co-found Lending Club with my good friend from Oracle. And 5 years into it, I tried to expand Lending Club to China, but then we immediately realized it's better to have a Chinese company. So I love fintech. I have a lot of hopes, the value that fintech brings to the financial institution. And that's my mission in life.
And can you give me a sense of the size and scale of Dianrong now?
Right. So there are multiple ways of measuring online lending platform. And there are about 43 attributes. We always are classified third, fourth, or fifth in China. So in terms of customers, we have looked at 15 million borrowers, and we approved about 35% of those. And we have about 4.5 million lenders. So these two sites cooperate on our platform. We do risk management, we do pricing, we do servicing, we do electronic contracts between them.
Okay, and how does that, in terms of market, like, would you be the largest peer lender? This, you know, any sense of
it
ranking?
Would be very, very hard to position ourselves in as exact of those numbers, but like I said, there are third parties that are classifying these companies,
right,
and we are third, fourth position.
And
the first one is a company called Lufax.
Right, which is backed by Ping An Insurance, which is a behemoth in its own right.
It's probably 4 or 5 times our size today.
Right, right. And the people you're disrupting would be the traditional banks, basically.
Yeah, so that word disrupting is not the right word. I like a better word. We are transforming. So banks, I give them the credit for all the civilization we see today. But unfortunately, that bank infrastructure has reached its capacity. And if we are to move ahead with the economy, there is a big number of small and micro businesses that are completely excluded from the banking world. So we are not disrupting the banks, we are creating a new market that did not exist before. Mm-hmm. So if you're borrowing $5 million, $10 million, I'm not gonna have the best product for you. But if you're borrowing $100,000 to $500,000, it will be extremely hard for the bank and the bank infrastructure to justify the costs for them to underwriting risks. So that's really the difficulty for them. But if you compare banks to technology companies are known for reducing cost of everything we do. Banks will always have the lowest cost of capital. So this is our focus. We create a market that did not exist before.
Got it. Now, could you tell us about a little bit yourself, your history, and Careem and how it's doing these days?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I started my career in technology in the Silicon Valley. This was in the 99-2000 era, the first dot-com bubble, and did a couple of startups, and more than anything else, learned what not to do and how to build a sustainable business versus just one that's going after a flip type of mindset. So did that for the first 8 years of my life, and then in 2008, wanted to move a bit closer to home. Home is Pakistan, so moved to Dubai, joined management consulting, did that for 4 years, and realized in the process that transportation, which was a daily need for us, because we had to go from airports to hotels, hotels to client site, almost on a daily basis, was not as streamlined and as efficient as it should be. So on most weeks, we would go to a Riyadh or a Jeddah. The guy that is supposed to come and pick us up from the airport doesn't show up, even if that person is there. Then the directions are not straightforward. I'm calling someone, he's calling someone. We're trying to figure out how to get to a certain location. He doesn't accept credit cards, which means that I have to figure out a way to pay him in the local currency. And then I have to expense it with paper receipts all over the place. So it was quite a cumbersome process. And we felt we could use our prior technology backgrounds, me and Magnus Olsson, who were both in consulting, to sort of streamline that process. So basically how we started was we created a business offering for transportation targeted at professional services organizations. Did that for the first year.
So kind of like a taxi, like a limousine service almost.
Like a limousine service, very, very focused on reliability, customer service, and did integrations with all of the corporate portals that allowed people to book conveniently, get access to their trip information. Our assistants can book for you, travel teams can book for you. So that's really what we did for the first 12 months until the whole hype around on-demand came up. And we were pretty much there with the entire business system that was required to make it happen. All we had to do was launch an app, give the on-demand ability, and it's been 5 years since then. And today we have become the largest ride-hailing operator in the Middle East. We operate in almost 14 countries, all the way from Morocco to Pakistan. We operate in 100 cities. And at this point, we have close to 1 million captains that are working, drivers or captains as we call them, working on our platform. In many of these countries, we have become the largest employer, if you want to use that word, in those countries. We create 70 to 80,000 new jobs every month. And if anyone is familiar with the Middle East, unemployment and the consequences of unemployment are a big topic. So we are grateful that we have the opportunity through the platform that we have built to create employment and hopefully create a prosperous Middle East.
So both of you have experience in multiple startups. What's the biggest mistake that you both have made? What's the dumbest moment in your career where you're like, wow? Because I think, for me personally, I have a lot of mistakes in my life, but I find that you learn more from the mistakes oftentimes than you do from the success, because sometimes success has a lot to do with luck and timing, but I'm curious to hear.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, the challenge is one of prioritization because there's so many mistakes, right? Which is the biggest mistake? It's a degree of quantum. But I think both the best things and the worst things have to be around people and have to be around talent, because that's the single most determining factor of success for us. So the biggest mistake is probably getting people on board that are not aligned with the values and with the mission, and not making a decision fast enough to not have them in the organization. Because if you bring in people at an early stage that are not aligned with what you want to build and the kind of culture that you want to build, then that becomes the culture, right? They bring the culture and they define the culture. And very soon, you have a lot of people that have been brought in by them that are not aligned with what you want to build. So the biggest mistake in my case has been, yes, we wanted some things done, and we had to bring in people that were not fully aligned, but they had the capability, but not making changes fast enough or recognizing the damage that would be done by not acting.
Interesting.
I would say there are two types of mistakes. There are mistakes that you know that you're making, and that's good, you can solve it, and those that you don't know. The majority of the mistakes, my opinion... Huh?
We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know.
Majority of the mistake, in my opinion, come from disconnect from reality. So when you're an entrepreneur, you dream all the time. So I'll give you an example that happened to us in our second year when we were building Lending Club. Facebook was launching Facebook app, and it called it F8. And we were one of the companies selected by Facebook to create the first financial app in that ecosystem. At that time, Facebook had 60 million users. I remember that day very well. My COO is jumping up and down going to buy servers because he thinks we're going to have so many customers that our current infrastructure is not going to keep up. So sure enough, we built it and we distributed our products on Facebook, but then nobody came. Then we started asking what's going on. People told us, look, I borrowed from Lending Club. The last thing I want is my friends to know that I'm borrowing money.
Right.
So when you look at it today, it's such a stupid mistake. We spent a lot of money. So we said, okay, maybe this is going to work on the lender side. Same story. Said, oh, I'm not going to tell my friends that I'm lending money to strangers because they're going to come to me and say, why don't you lend me? And that's quite a big problem. So we were drinking the Kool-Aid thinking, oh, social networks, you can put whatever service out there and it's going to go viral. But finance is such a private matter to individuals that I'm not sure the best way to promote it is social networks.
Interesting. That's a really interesting.
So it's a complete misread of society and the product. And we learned the hard way. So that, I would say, was quite a big mistake.
That's really insightful. You also talk about the hiring process, and you talk about the mistakes in growing in scale, how important hiring and maintaining the corporate culture when you're trying to grow to scale. How do you then filter out? How do you find out? What do you go on a hike with somebody? Do you go drinking with them? Do you give them a test? How can you find that match?
Yeah. So first, I think the first step in that process is just to know what you want, right? Because articulating what are the values is not straightforward because it's a vague thing. And all of us want to be hip and cool and flat and non-hierarchical, but just articulating what attributes and what values are authentic and unique to you that you want to build is the first step. So in our case, we boiled it down to 3 values that are super important to us, and there are sub-values under them. But the values that are critically important to us are ambition. We want to get people on board that are super, super ambitious, that will dream for the moon and try to get there. Second, there is mission orientation, which is being of service. So we're not building something to make money, but we're building something because we deeply, deeply care about the people of the region, wanting to simplify their lives, and building something that inspires the region to build more startups like Careem. And the third thing is around ownership. This is the culture that we want to build, where we tell our people there is no employee at Careem. We only have colleagues. That's a word that we never use within the company. And that culture of ownership and people that can take this ownership are super, super important. So for us, these are 3 things. We've articulated them. And then it's a function of assessing people on these 3 skills. It becomes a relatively straightforward process. There are tests that you can give them that test for these things. There are questions that you can ask them. There are people that do better screening for personalities than, for example, I can do, so make sure that the right people are speaking to them. And at the end of the day, then make a call, right? Not everyone is going to be fully aligned. I think the discussion is, are they broadly aligned, and can we bring them closer to us? Or are they so far out on the left that this is going to damage our culture?
So let me ask you, what's the smartest thing that you both think you've done in building out your current businesses?
Your questions are extreme. For me personally, moving to China was by far the most interesting thing I've done in my life. From a personal point of view, from a professional point of view, from a also mission point of view. I really think, I go around and people think that I'm a hero, don't speak a single word in Chinese, but then came to China and did all of this. But it's not really that difficult. Human beings are human beings, whether they are in China or in the US or in France. So everybody goes out of his house trying to solve the exact same problems. People want to find opportunity, they want to preserve what they have, and I think the message is becoming more and more universal.
But I mean, that's actually, so how do you convince investors that Big Nose,
Right.
Lawai, the foreigner, is going to go into finance in China which, if anyone spent time in China, finance is a complex, both highly, it's contradictory in that it's both highly regulated and also complete Wild West, crazy place of scams and ripoffs. And how could somebody who doesn't speak the language, can't read Chinese, sign a contract? How are you not going to be ripped off blind? How did you tell an investor, trust me, I got this?
Right, right. So anytime somebody tells you, trust me, I get this, go to the other direction.
Okay.
You don't convince people by saying, trust me, I got this. So you have to show evidence. So I will never go, and I just landed in Shanghai, and I will go to an investor and say, I want to raise $200 million from you. Here, we'll do. There are steps that you have to do. You were talking about the team. Your number one stop is finding people to partner with. So entrepreneurs, every single day of their life, we try to convince one more person to accept our vision of life. So we have to convince partners, exec team, employees, customers, business partners, and then we go to shareholders and investors. There should be a bootstrapping. So in my case, my background from Lending Club and being the co-founder, they gave me credibility. So of course, the first people that took a big risk with me are super happy today from a return point of view. So if you look at it at that time, the risk-reward equation for them was perfectly balanced. Today, they are very happy. But people that joined us last year or the year before have to do a very serious analysis. I mean, they make investment not after 1 or 2 meetings, but after a due diligence process of 6 months. So they have to look at the strategy, they interview the management, they go even interview customers. So don't try to go from the beginning of the book all the way to the middle and ask, how did we get here? You have to read the whole books, page by page.
And for yourself, I mean, you also, it's interesting because you had a business already running, right? You were already generating cash flow with this limousine business, right? This sort of business-focused car service. So how did you then pivot to the broader ride-hailing, and how did you convince investors that, hey, look, you know, we got this, you know?
Yeah, so I think convincing investors, at least our view has been that it boils down to 2 things. You need to be going after a big opportunity. So the market space that you're going after is big. There's a lot of headroom. There are inefficiencies that you can exploit to create something big. So as consultants, when we first started Careem, you know, one of the first things that we did was every idea that we had, we market sized it. How big is it? How big is it? How big is it? Because my last startup before joining consulting was a relative niche play. And one of the things that I promised myself is if I do the next startup, I'm going to make sure that there is enough headroom for us to keep on growing for a long time. So that, it seems, essential to building a large business, right? There needs to be headspace for you to grow big. And the second is traction, right? You need to have growth that demonstrates validation and demonstrates traction. So with what we had built on the business side, we had demonstrated, you know, tremendous traction. And since the initial focus was business, and that's what we were raising money for, we were also able to demonstrate and show that that itself was a reasonably big opportunity. So the fact that we had a relatively large opportunity, which was business travel in the Middle East, that we had pretty tremendous traction in because we knew the pain points really, really well. We came from that background. We had lived those lives struggling to get around the Middle East. We were able to build a product iteratively that met the needs of all the stakeholders, the consultants, their assistants, their travel teams, their finance teams. We had built something that worked for all of them. And since that traction was there, it was easy then to convince people that this business has legs and this will go somewhere. And with the money that we raised in the first round, and then the pivot to the consumer business, we were able to invest that money to build the consumer business. And some of the learnings that we had building that business platform were the ones that really saved the day when global competition came into the market. Because the reliability that we had to hit for the business customer and the customer service that we had to hit for the business customer and those were really gold standards, really became our differentiators in the consumer space. Because competition came into the market, and they had a service which it was a nice looking app, better looking app than our app, and they were giving a lot of subsidies to get people to use them, but they were not able to reliably get you from point A to point B. So even if you get a free trip, but that trip doesn't happen, then that defeats the purpose. So the business platform that we had built with reliability and customer service really became the differentiator. And the first round of funding gave us the ammunition to go and build the consumer play, show traction in the consumer play, and then raise money for the consumer play going forward.
So how do you, now that both of you are actually quite sizable in your own rights, how do you watch out, prevent being in turn disrupted by another upstart? You know, how do you defend your market now?
So, yeah, let me make sure that we share with you what we see. Then we use the word defend, or probably another word. So we don't think that there is a box limited in size, and you throw entrepreneurs there, and you say it's a zero-sum game. If you win, you lose. It's more like an ocean, and every
People
tool...
drowning?
It's no Hunger Game.
Sharks? Okay, I'm with you.
Absolutely. So in order for you to navigate all of that, you have to have the right tools. So in our case, is risk management, is low-cost technology, and so on, and so on, and so on. So every time there is a new innovation that comes in the market, whether we are responsible for it or whether a small company does it, it actually makes our job a little bit easier, and so on, and so on. So if we are sitting here promoting innovation and promoting entrepreneurship, the last thing I'm going to tell you is I'm going to try to prevent others from doing it. No. I think the world can have another 5 or 6 Amazons, can have another 5 or 6 Alibabas.
But that's counter to everything I've heard. Everyone talks about how the internet actually leads to monopolies.
No, that's not true. There are some business models by their nature that we have to have one single company. For example, if you are connecting with your friends, you're not going to create an account in 7 different social networks.
You know what I do? WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook, iPhone, whatever, yeah, okay.
But my point is WeChat is for China.
Right.
WhatsApp is for the US.
Hong Kong and, yeah.
Exactly. My point is that, so you're probably unique, but majority of people are going to stay with one.
Right.
So business models like that, yes, we need concentration. But if you look at finance, you have banks focused on consumer finance, banks focus on SME, banks focus on corporates. It's a very, very horizontal industry.
Interesting. And for yourself, we were talking earlier how I wrote about a local app called HK Taxi, which is, for sort of regulatory reasons, now they're able to defend Hong Kong as an example, a counterexample to these multinational giants like Uber and Careem as well. So how do you defend against an upstart?
So look, I think we truly believe in the upstarts, right? We were an upstart and we squeezed through. So we believe in them. And our view on this is, at least in the context of the Middle East, most of the upstarts will struggle with 2 things that we struggled with as well. One is access to technology talent, which is not a given in the Middle East. And you need deep technology talent to scale platforms. You can build something basic with locally available technology talent, but to build something that can handle millions of transactions with security, with everything else, requires deep technical ability that is difficult to find in the Middle East. And the second is funding. To build consumer businesses, you need to be able to raise a lot of money. So most local startups, upstarts, will struggle with these 2 things. And our view on this is, look, they will have great local ideas. Many of them will succeed. And instead of fighting them, let's embrace them. Let's give them the tools they need to be successful. And in the process of building Careem, we have built a lot of the infrastructure in the region that can be exposed to them and make it easy for them to build their businesses and ride on top of the Careem platform. So our strategy, our vision is to build Careem into an internet-enabling platform for the Middle East, which embraces upstarts and which enables upstarts to build more Careems from the region.
Okay, well, you heard it here first. If you have a Middle East-focused startup, come to Careem and they'll help you do your billing and perhaps some marketing SMSs and whatnot. And if you a China-based SME and you need a loan for up to $500,000?
1 million.
1 million. Okay, I'll be talking to you as well. But our time is up, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.